this verse from Isaiah talks about a clean bill of health. Now, of course, when we think of that term, we usually think of the physical body. But in this message, I'm developing that to make us think really not just about our physical well-being, but also our soul, our spirit, the inner man, if you like. I went for an MOT, as they call it, a health MOT recently, and I was really happy, as we would be, because I passed with flying colours. My cholesterol levels were perfect, my sugar in the blood was perfect, my body mass index was spot on, everything. I ticked all the boxes, blood pressure, all of those things that I ticked. Now, of course, there will be folks who, through no fault of their own, find themselves in ill health. Now, I'm not talking about that, and I'm certainly not gloating or whatever, because I was in that position. I'm speaking just from a personal level. But the reason that I ticked all those boxes is because I've made the right decisions. Some years ago, I stepped on the scales and I realised my weight was going up. So I did something about it. I tackled the health issue in my own life, if you like. And so the reason that I can tick those boxes now, it's not by chance or coincidence, but because I've done something about it. And likewise, with the inner man, with our inner being, we need to do something about it. And there are 4 principles that we can apply into our lives, that if we tick those boxes, they are progressive, then we will be in a place whereby we're in a good, clean bill of health, as it tells us there in Isaiah. Not physically, not just physically, not necessarily talking about that. It's not a health message, it's a message for the inner man. So it's inner health as well, if you like. But of course, with body, soul and spirit being so connected, what happens in one also affects the other. For example, a classic example of that is if you have a cold, and a cold, as we know, is a physical thing, but if you have a cold that just drags on for a couple of weeks, you start to feel run down. You can start to feel lack of motivation, you can start to feel depressed, you can start to feel that things are just against you, and that's the inner man, obviously. But because our body, our soul, our spirit are so closely connected, then what happens in the area of one affects the other. So if we tick those boxes in the one, the other, the third, then of course it helps us to develop an overall healthy perspective for our lives. But the 4 principles that we need to look at and apply into our lives, first of all, they all begin with D. First of all, desire. You've got to want to do it. When I stepped on those scales, it was 2002, and I saw the dial go way up, way beyond where I thought I was. I was shocked, and I looked down at those scales and I saw where the needle was, and I wanted to do something about it. And that's the key. We've got to want to do something about our lives, whatever it is in our character, whatever it is that's going on in our lives. We've got to want to do something about it, because if we don't implement change, then we won't see a difference in the way that our lives are lived. So we have to want to do something about that. I stood on those scales, I looked down, I didn't like what I saw, so I had the desire to do something about it. And likewise, we may have an issue with some particular part of our character, but we've got to want to do something about it. And we can't blame other people as well. We lose our temper because it's somebody else's fault. We get agitated because it's that person to blame. We can't always blame other people. We can't put the blame on other folks. We have to look at ourselves, and we have to get the desire to want to change. Secondly, we have to have determination. Desire in itself is good, but if it stays there, then we're never going to move on from that. We have to have determination. If you like, determination is the legs that we put onto desire. So we then determined to do something about it. Back to my own personal illustration, as I looked at the scales and I looked down and I saw what the reading was, not only did I have a desire to want to change that, but also I had the determination. So from that moment in time, I began to do something about it. Desire, if you like, starts in our mind, but determination is the outworking of that. And so if there's something in our lives that we don't like, that we're honest with ourselves and we see we have a character flaw or something in our personality that just isn't where we want it to be, we have to desire to change, but also we have to have determination. We have to bring it to the stage where we do something about it. And then thirdly, we need discipline, because we can start to do something about it and then we can tail off. We need discipline to apply into our lives that which needs to be worked out. So it's no good just looking at something, say we lose our temper and thinking, that's not right, I want to change it, I'm going to be determined, and we do it for like a week and then we just let it go. There has to be a discipline so that we, if you like, analyse ourselves, analyse our own lives, so we come to the point where we actually recognise what the problems are. A little bit of self-criticism in a positive sense is very, very good. Not where we beat ourselves up, because that is just fruitless and won't take us anywhere other than down negative paths. But self-analysis, where we examine our own lives, we're honest with ourselves, and it's not a case of sitting in a room and telling everyone else our faults or confessing them to someone, which can be a bit embarrassing sometimes. This is about just me or you on our own, being honest with ourselves and recognising that we need discipline. There's a certain situation that always puts us into a path of despair. So avoid the situation. It may be difficult, which is why we need discipline. We need to train ourselves to go down the paths that produce wholesome living as opposed to that which is destructive. And discipline is very important. Self-control is one of the fruit of the Spirit. And as we examine our hearts, we examine our lives, desire, determination, discipline, but also, finally, and this is important, we need dedication. We need to be dedicated to the path that we've decided to walk to change our lives. I go into a particular town near to where I live, and along the main road there's a gym, and it's one of those gyms with windows that look in and quite an expanse of frontage on the main road, and as you look in, it's lined with exercise bikes. Now on January the 1st, if you drive down that road, those exercise bikes are all full. There are people frantically pedalling away on those exercise bikes. But as you start to move on through the year, and you certainly come to the autumn, you might see just one or two people on there, just the odd folks pedalling away. The numbers that started off at the beginning of the year to do something about their, in that case, physical health, they had desire, they had determination, they had discipline for a while, but they didn't have the dedication, they didn't see it through. When we embark on a journey that looks inward into our lives, it's not a journey that should be for 2 weeks or 4 weeks or for the summer or whatever it might be. It should be a journey that takes us right the way through for the rest of our lives. This is why on the issue of Lent, now I never criticise anyone that embarks on Lent, but personally, it's just a personal thing for me. I don't engage in giving up something for Lent, because I work on the basis that if something is bad for me, give it up anyway for good. We'll stop smoking for Lent, stop smoking for good. We'll stop swearing for Lent, because don't forget, it's just everybody who seems to engage in these things these days, not just, religious people. We'll stop swearing for Lent, stop swearing for good. If something is recognised by me as potentially destructive in my life, I want to give it up, not just for a month or so, I want to give it up for the rest of my life. And I think it's good to look inward into our lives, to examine ourselves and to see where we are at fault, because it's so easy to just blame other people all the while. It's their fault, it's his fault, her fault, the devil made me do it. All of those things we can bring in, and ultimately they're just excuses. We are accountable for the way we live our lives. We're accountable for the decisions and the consequences that then follow in what we live in our everyday lives. So we need to look in. We recognize that something's not right. I shouldn't be living like that. I shouldn't be using those sort of words. I shouldn't be having a lifestyle that takes me down that particular path. We recognize it's not right. We need desire. And then with desire comes determination. We put legs on the desire and we take it somewhere. We need discipline. You've got to bring a change of habit, and the best way to defeat a bad habit is to replace it with a good one. And that can be tough. That's why we need discipline. We need, if we're taking something out of our lives, we need to put something good in its place. So we need discipline to do that. And then finally, we need dedication. We have to see it through. Otherwise, it's short term. It might benefit us for a week, a month, or whatever. But if it's not for the rest of our lives, then it's all in vain ultimately. We need to be dedicated. So I love that verse in Isaiah. It's in the Message, and it says that we will have a clean bill of health. It's good when we have a physical clean bill of health, of course, but perhaps in some ways, more importantly, as we look inwardly, that's where we need to start ticking those boxes. And those 4 points that I've shared in this message, those principles, when we apply them in our lives, will enable us to walk that path that leads to a clean bill of health in body, soul, and spirit.